Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If we want to accomplish things, we have to put forth effort. It is said God loves effort, and we need to understand effort, and we have to have the discipline to put forth effort. There can be 20 people standing around a cow. However, somebody, one of them, is going to have to wash the cow, clean the cow, and feed the cow, and house the cow in order to get some milk out of it. If everybody just stands around, not much is going to happen, and there isn't going to be any return. In the same way, if we want to learn about wisdom, we have to put forth some effort. We have to find a wise man, and we have to go listen to him. And we have to have the faith, certitude, and determination to be able to actually hear what he says and try to implement it in our life. In my own situation, I began to look for a teacher when I was approximately 22 years old. I had come into circumstances that were difficult, and I knew the world wasn't going to answer the situation I was in. So I was looking for another way. And I kept reading and reading and reading. And the books said often, when you're ready for a teacher will find you. And then about the time I reached 26, I got a phone call that said, there's a teacher in Philadelphia, and you should probably come see him. And I did. And he was beyond my imagination. He didn't look like anything I thought he would look like. He couldn't speak English. But as I sat in front of him, I found contentment, and I found answers to my questions, and I found a sense of peace that I had never found before. So when we come to a teacher, there are a number of things that we have to do. We have to be able to listen. We have to be able to imbibe, and we have to be able to understand the circumstances that we're in. But the world has so many different scenarios. We are born into the world. We come naked, and we don't have anything. And when we leave the world, we really can't take anything with us. But we spend a lifetime gathering things, and we hoard things, and we look for more things, and our mind and desire bring us to places to grab things. Now, these things didn't come with us when we were born, and we can't take them with us when we leave. So, does it ever occur to any of us that maybe none of these things belong to us? Maybe they're just borrowed and they're not really ours. And if our attitude towards them is that they are ours, we've somehow misplaced truth, and we've misplaced understanding. There was once a rich man who kept all his money under his bed. And he had a lot of money. And there was a fruit vendor who used to come by his house. And the fruit vendor would be selling fruit for 12 cents a piece. And the rich man didn't like to spend money on anything. His joy was putting more money under his mattress. So when the vendor came by and said he wanted 12 cents for a piece of fruit, he'd offer him two. And the vendor would say, how can I sell you a piece of fruit for two when it cost me 11? I'm hardly making a profit. And they would get nowhere, and the rich man would go back to his house. Now, the rich man lived up on a hill, and below him there was a valley. And he could see into the valley, and every day he would sit outside and watch what went on. And he saw this woodcutter who would come home after a hard day's work, and the fruit vendor would be down there. And the woodcutter would come up to the vendor and say, how much is the fruit? And the vendor would say, 12 cents a piece. And he would say, give me a dozen. And he would pay for them. And then he would share them with his friends. And they would laugh and they would talk. And there was a lot of happiness and joy going on. Now, it just so happened that the rich man knew a guru. And every once in a while, the guru would come by his house. One day, the guru came by, and the rich man began to complain to him. He said, I sit out on my porch and I look in the valley, and there's this woodcutter who hardly makes any money, spends all his money, buys fruit, shares it with his friends, and they're all happy. Meanwhile, I have more money than they can imagine, and I can't bring myself to spend it for a piece of fruit, and I have no happiness. What's the problem? And the guru said, give me 99 cents and let's put it into a bag. And he took the bag and he said, throw the bag into the poor man's house. And the next day he did. And when the man came home from work, he saw the bag and began to count and saw that he had 99 cents. He said, if I only had 100. And he went to work the next day. And instead of buying fruit, he only bought one piece and put the rest of the money in with his bag of money. And he began to stay inside counting his money. And every day he would go to work, and instead of spending his money, he would save a little more money and save a little more money. Eventually, he dug a hole and put the money in a hole and began to start another bag of money. But his joy was lost. His interaction with his friends was lost. Now, all of a sudden at night, he couldn't sleep because he was thinking about his money. And the guru said to the rich man, he said, there are three main desires that man has: earth, women, and money. The disease of money, greed, can overwhelm you to the point where money becomes an end to itself. And if this happens to you, you'll lose your happiness. You'll lose your joy. You'll lose your sense of reality. Everything will become about money. And greed will overwhelm your being. And if greed overwhelms your being, there can be no happiness. There can be no joy. Sorrow enters into the place. The people who have greed have sorrow and sadness. They can never have enough. It doesn't matter if a man has $100 or $1 million or $1 billion. If he has greed, it's not enough. And for a man who doesn't have greed, whatever he has is enough. And the juxtaposition of enough and not enough is an interesting juxtaposition. And we need to understand it. And it has to do with your faith. It has to do with your belief system. If you believe that God will provide, then there is no fear, and whatever you have is sufficient, and you know it will continue to be sufficient. If you don't have that belief, and you believe that what takes care of you is your wealth, then you never have enough wealth to overcome your fear. And sorrow and sadness overcome you. Wise men know this is crazy. They know that this is a crazy way to be, but men don't understand this. Men don't understand how to use money and how to use money correctly. I myself had this dilemma when I was about 27 or 28. We had just been married, and I wondered if I should buy a house. And I went to Bawa and I said, I'm thinking of buying a house. Should I buy a house? Is it okay to own personal property? And he laughed at me. He said, you have to buy a house and you better do it quickly because the only thing that's going to happen is they're going to get more expensive. And the longer you wait, the more they're going to cost. And I'm old enough now to have watched inflation for the last 50 years, and everything is double, triple, four times, five times what it cost. And if I wouldn't have bought the house when I bought it, it would have just cost me more. And then I began to understand that there is a balance in all of this. You have to be able to earn money, take care of things, but don't let it overwhelm you. Everything has to be in a middle way, in a middle path. You can't allow your emotions to control who you are. You can't allow greed to overwhelm you, and you can't become lazy. You have to have effort. You have to make money. You have to take care of your family. You have to accumulate savings, and you have to help others. It needs to have a balance. We live in the world, but we are not of the world. A lotus flower lives in a pond, and it's a big leaf. And the lotus flower has roots that go all the way down into the mud in the pond, and it gets its sustenance from that. And the water sometimes rolls on the leaf, but it always rolls off. The lotus pond doesn't let the water stay on it, doesn't let the water get involved in it. The way the world comes into us is through our mind and desire. Our mind and desire bring the outside world into us. The world isn't in us until we bring it in to us. And we need to really get a grasp on this and understand it. We bring the world into ourself, and the difficulties with the world come into us because our mind and desire bring them into us. And we pay attention to our mind. We are in the incorrect assumption that our thought process is us and that our mind is us. I heard a psychiatrist lecturing about how the mind can take you in all kinds of difficult situations. And he said a good exercise is to give your mind a name. Like, call it something, call it Jim, call it Sarah, and say, oh my God, Jim is out of his mind again, telling me what to do. Or Sarah has gone crazy telling me what to do again and trying to take me in all kinds of directions. If you can identify your mind as separate from you by naming it, you have a better opportunity of escaping it because now you haven't connected it to yourself and you've given some distance between you and it. Our body, if we don't wash it, stinks. We have to wash it and we have to clean it, and we have to do this constantly. It's something we have to do every day. Now, when we bring the world inside of us, it also begins to stink because the qualities that we take in when we take the world inside of us are less than divine. They are the qualities of the world, and the qualities of the world are not the best of qualities. We bring greed into ourselves. We bring arrogance into ourselves. We bring anger into ourselves. We bring jealousy into ourselves. In the constant effort to satisfy the wants of mind and desire, we will begin to do almost anything in order to satisfy what they want. And this shows a complete lack of wisdom. This is, in fact, greed, because now what is the driving force in our life is that which we want as opposed to that which we truly need. And we have to detach ourselves from this greed. We have to detach ourselves from this constant wanting. We have to detach ourselves from constant need. Being in need puts us in difficult situations because being in need harms our certitude. Being in need harms our faith. Being in need puts us in a state of fear. So if we believe that God will provide, need dissipates and faith replaces it. Need dissipates and the understanding that God is all giving all the time replaces it. But to do this, we need wisdom. We need the understanding of God's qualities. We need to understand what it's like to look at the world from a divine perspective, what it's like to look at the world from a transcendent perspective. There's a expression, you can't see the forest for the trees. Well, when you are in constant need, you can't see the truth because of the need. The need overwhelms you. The fear overwhelms you. And that fear becomes the driving force in your life. And to mollify that fear, to make that fear less, sometimes man will do almost anything. And that's how stealing happens. That's how murder happens. That's how all of these vicious things happen, because this need becomes so great in man. And we need to overcome that. If you look around the world, you'll see children are born everywhere, and they all come out the same way, naked. And they're all very similar to each other when they're born. They're almost all the same. They may have a different skin tone, but they come with the same qualities. They come with the same needs. But after a few months, they begin to change. They begin to change because of the influence around them and the circumstances around them. Their natural qualities are cut off, and their parents and the society they're born in graft their opinions and their ideas onto them and form them into different kinds of people. So we end up with different kinds of people all over the world, not because man was sent here this way, but because of the ideas of the societies and the parents that they were born into. In the world, we have poor men and we have rich men. Rich men came into the world the same way as poor men. They came naked, and there was an equality among men. But then things change as time goes on. Some people become rich. How do they become rich? Well, there's lots of ways that people can make money, but there is permissible ways and there are not permissible ways. Many people become rich because of circumstances that are other than permissible. They steal, they cheat, they do whatever they can in order to hoard money. Other men understand what is permissible and earn their money in a permissible way. These men are also simultaneously on the path towards God. These men don't believe in the world, they believe in God, but they also understand their responsibility to the world, to their families, and to other men. So they put forth an effort to provide for those around them and to provide for those who are poorer than them. The ones who do things in a permissible way develop compassion, they develop love, and they give unto others. Charity becomes part of who they are. We need to be able to understand that. And we need to be able to watch our circumstances. A responsible person watches the money that comes in and the money that goes out. We don't become overly greedy and we don't become overly flagrant with how we spend money. We understand our circumstances and we try to live within our circumstances. This is something everybody has to understand and everybody has to learn. Unfortunately, they don't really teach these things in school, but we have to learn them. We have to learn to live a balanced life. We have to have jobs and we have to take care and are responsible for certain things in our life. I remember I moved to Philadelphia to be closer to Bawa. And I think I was about 40 years old at the time, maybe a little younger. And I said to him, I'm thinking of cutting back on work, maybe even hardly going in so I can spend more time with you. And he said, you have plenty of time to spend with me in the evening. Go to work, do what you're supposed to do, and you're too young to stop working. When you reach about 65 or 70, you can stop working. In the meantime, you have to work and you have to supply funds for your family, and you have to be able to help the fellowship, and you have to do all of these things. We all have these responsibilities in the world. We have ideas sometimes that abandoning certain situations brings us to a better place, but it doesn't. Not being involved in effort takes you away from understanding the nature of effort. And we can't forget the nature of effort. Effort is very tied in to who we are. And if we lose our effort, then not only will we lose our effort towards getting things done in the world, that same effort is required to find our way towards God. And if we lose that effort, we're not only going to give up the world, we're going to give up God. And we can't do that. So remember, hold on to your effort. Nobody has seen God. But if a man has the qualities of God, the grace of God, the compassion of God, the mercy of God, God will be seen through him. So if you can find a wise man who has taken on the qualities of God, and if you can sit with that wise man and begin to understand what the driving force is that makes him who he is, what the driving force is that takes him to the place that he is, you can begin to understand reality. And one of the things that has to happen if there's going to be progress in your journey towards truth is that when you're with a wise man, you have to take on the qualities of the wise man. You have to learn how he acts. You have to see how he does things. You have to understand why he does things. You have to see his evenness towards everybody. You have to see the evenness in his personality. You have to see that he never gets too high and he never gets too low, that he's always in a kind state. And you have to bring these qualities into yourself. If you can't bring these qualities into yourself, you're never going to understand reality. You're never going to change. You're going to continue to be the way you were before you met the wise man. The point of interacting with a wise man is to become wise. The point of interacting with a wise man is to transcend all of the things that keep you tied to this earth. And as we all understand, everything that's tied to the earth dies. Everything that's tied to the earth disappears. Everything that's tied to the earth has an end. And we are trying to escape that end. We are trying to transcend that and understand that which is eternal. Why do we sit with the guru? Why do we sit with the sheikh? What is it that draws us to him? What is the magnetism that pulls us towards him? It's love. It's the love that he is constantly emitting. It's the love that he is constantly giving. And if we have become sensitive, we become attuned to this love, and this love does something for us that can't be done by any of the wealth in the world, can't be done by any of the glitters in the world, can't be done by any of the fireworks in the world, can't be done by any of the power that you get from the world, can't be done by any of the fame that you get from the world, can't be done by the gold of the world. There's a wholeness that enters into us when we feel this love that doesn't come from anywhere else. What happens is, as this love enters us, as this love overwhelms us, all of the things that we have gathered, that we carry from the world, begin to become less important to us. And we begin to give them up because we find we don't need them anymore. So our anger leaves us because love does away with anger. Our arrogance leaves us because love does away with arrogance. Our fear leaves us because love overwhelms fear and lets us know that there is nothing to fear because love is here. Love is in front of us. Love is possible for us. And the station of love is a station that we can enter and that we can live in. Imagine there's a train between here and California, and the train has hundreds of cars, and it carries heavy loads. And then at each station along the way, it drops some of the loads off until finally it gets to its destination and there's no more loads. Well, we're all carrying loads that we've gathered our entire life. And slowly, we have to get rid of these loads. We have to get rid of them and give them up. And being in the presence of someone who loves, being in the presence of someone who's transcended the needs of the world, allows us to begin to understand how it's done. Because without doing that, we can't come close to God. Without giving up everything we've hoarded in the world, we can't come close to God. Now, I've heard people complain that there are so few wise men, yet there's so many people. Well, each of you found a situation. Each of you got tied in to the grace that was Bawa Muhaiyaddeen. How did it happen? Well, it can happen for anybody, and it can happen for everybody. The world is full of people, but there's only one sun. The world is full of people, but there's only one moon. The world is full of people, but there's only one God, and it's sufficient. So, wisdom that exists in this world is sufficient. And if you put forth the effort to find that wisdom, you will find it. And then you have to put forth the effort to bring that wisdom into you. You have to imbibe that wisdom. If you're thirsty, you have to look for water. And if you want wisdom, you have to look for places where wisdom is taught. And you will find it. And you have to have a belief system that believes you will find it. You have to have a positive belief system. You have to have faith that God is intending you to know the truth. God is intending for you to understand all of the mysteries. God is intending for you to know Him and to know reality. God is intending for you to become the ones who are close to Him and to enter into His kingdom and everlasting life. That is why you were created. And that is His intention for you. And it's also the intention of every wise man in the world. Every wise man's intention is to bring the truth to you and to let you know reality, to let you know the qualities of God, to let you be able to imbibe the qualities of God. There has to be a change, and it has to come about somehow in our life. We have to understand that there's only one truth, there's only one reality. And this reality can only be reached in a certain way. And it's reached to allowing compassion and mercy to enter into our being. It's reached to having a melting heart. It's reached to being empathetic. It's reached by seeing all men as ourselves and having compassion for all men. It's reached when the compassion and the mercy and the love within us melts and flows into the world. And as it flows, so does our closeness to reality come. We have to maintain that intention to be close to God. We have to maintain that intention that His grace and His bliss are allowed to enter us. And to do that, we have to know that the abhorrent qualities can't be part of us because they act as restrictions to truth. Anger and arrogance and hastiness and jealousy are walls that don't allow truth to enter. So we have to become soft. We have to become kind. We have to become loving. God rules all of the universes with love. If it's good enough for Him to rule all of the universes, isn't love good enough to be the overriding principle in our lives? If we can do that, then bliss will become ours. If we can do that, then God will enter our heart and will bring to us all of the truth that exists and will open up the mysteries of reality to us. He is the one we have to worship. We have to understand that it is His love that makes everything go around. And we have to tie ourselves to this love and understand that this love and truth is all that exists. And we have to repeat, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. He alone exists. He alone exists. He alone exists. And in that understanding, we merge with eternity and we become eternal. May it be so for each and every one of us. May it happen in this way for each and every one of us. May we all come close to Him and be among those who are considered the ones who are His sons and daughters. Ameen, Ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.